Hello, mousers! There's a statement appearing on toilet walls and doors the world over which reads, "Since writing on toilet walls is done neither for critical acclaim nor financial rewards, it is the purest form of art. Discuss." So discuss we shall. I've long been of the opinion that the truest art has no purpose outside of itself. Under this view, cars are not art. Buildings are not art. They can be artful, which means that they can embody some of the, or many of the, various forms and points of art, but they are not in themselves artistic. They have a purpose other than being art. For example, a car has to move, a building has to be something you can occupy, things like that. So although they can be artistic, they are not art in and of themselves. In that respect, something that exists without the need for acclaim or financial reward has an awful lot more in common with art than, for example, a car, which its purpose is to be a vehicle. However, we can't just say that because of this, graffiti is art, because not all graffiti is equal. For example, let's consider the more common version of graffiti, which is just a scrawled name or a tag. Things like that. They have a purpose to them. They're either there to denote territory in the form of gang tags, denote territory in the form of drug gang tags for their area, or simply because some gang or some guy in a gang or some guy on his own has decided that he wants to make the world realise he's there. It's basically, I am here, look at me, I need some attention. That kind of thing. Someone who's devoid of attention and wants to get it by having people see their name that's scrawled 3 feet high on the side of a building and say, oh, John was here, that kind of thing. Or, oh, who did that? That kind of thing. That in itself does not make it art because it has a purpose that is separate from the idea of art. But what about the other kind of gang tag or the other kind of named scroll tag? What about the ones that actually have some graphic quality to them? What about word art as graffiti? Does that also fit with the lack of art idea? There's an awful lot of skill gone into it, certainly, and an awful lot of time has gone into it. So does that change whether it's art or not? I have to argue that it doesn't change whether it's art or not. The fact is that you can't put a value judgment on the amount of skill and the amount of time that something has been taking up in order to define whether it's art or not. That's an odd metric to try and measure anything by, and no one will agree on it. Because it's an objective test on a subjective matter, which doesn't work. And also, it comes down to the fact that a graphic tag, word art style graffiti is the same as a car. A lot of skill has gone into the car. A lot of knowledge has gone into the car. A lot of time has gone into the car. A lot of skill has gone into the word art. A lot of time has gone into the word art, but the purposes haven't changed. That tag is still there for the same reasons that the scroll tag was. It might look prettier, and it probably was intended to look an awful lot better, so that the chances of it staying are a lot better. But it's still, underneath, it has the same purpose. And that's what matters at the end of the day. So I'm going to argue that word art tags still are not art. So if graphic art tags aren't art, what about the other forms of graffiti? What about the sayings that you see on doors and walls everywhere? What about the doodles that you see everywhere? What about murals? Are they art? On my first instinct, I'm going to say yes, but only providing that they can fill the no other purpose requirement of art. My second instinct, however, is to argue that doodles and murals are a form of decoration. And does this detract from the requirements on the art perspective? Does this mean that because a doodle or a mural are there specifically to decorate, does that stop them being art? No, it can't. Because all art, to some extent, is decoration. The first cave paintings were art, but they were certainly decorative. The Mona Lisa is art, but it's certainly decorative. It's something that you put on the wall. A fresco is art, but you can't take away from the fact that it is decorative and part of the building. Because when you finish producing a fresco, it inextricably becomes part of the wall that it's on. It's decorative, but it's art. So, I say that being decorative and a purpose of being decorative does not detract from something being art. It's like the exception to the rule. So if frescoes are art and the Mona Lisa is art, murals have to be art. Graffiti murals must be art due to the fact that, yes, their purpose is definitely decorative, but their purpose is also to create art. And they are certainly art because of that. But what about doodles? Doodles don't take up nearly as much time or nearly as much skill as a mural. Surely that means it's separate. But then again, we come back to the idea of how much time do you have to spend on something to be considered art. We get back to the objective test. You can't have an objective test on subjective materials. So we've got to argue from that perspective that we take no view of how long it took to produce the doodle and no view of how much skill is involved. We have to look at the doodle as a concept and is it art? And we have to say yes, the mural is art, the doodle has to be art. So now we come to our final part of graffiti, sayings, phrases, just little terms that are on walls. But the problem with this is it's more complex, because to look at the written word as art, you've got to look at the message that's contained in it. The content of the message determines what its purpose is, and for a certain extent, graffiti phrases on walls will not be art, because the content is something like, oh, John licks feet, or Billy smells, or something equally defamatory. The point of these messages is to defame rather than to make art, so the content is definitely an indicator of purpose. And because the purpose is not art, it's defamation, we have to say those particular phrases are not art. Also, the ones that are just there to cause trouble, like for a good time, call my ex-girlfriend's number, that kind of thing. We know that that's not there for art. That's not there to produce anything artistic. It's there to cause trouble. And again, we can't say that's art because its main purpose is not artistic. Its main purpose is causing trouble. So the message is important, which is why we have to now turn to a phrase like the one that we started with. Is that art? It's there to cause discussion and to make you think. Does that stop it from being art? And to answer this, we've got to again look to other examples of art. A lot of art is there to provoke some sort of feeling. It's there to make you think. It's there to give over an idea of some concept. So I would argue that, yes, a phrase that is there simply to make you think is art in and of itself. It's something that has artistic value, it's something that has artistic merit, it is something that's intrinsically artistic. So yes, I'm going to argue that that kind of graffiti message is definitely art. So, graffiti messages can be art, but you have to look at the context, because not all messages are art. So, now that we've decided that messages on toilet walls can be art, we have to look at the idea of whether it is the purest form of art. And here I'm going to have to argue that it's not. Just because you don't want critical acclaim or you don't want financial reward from the art you produce doesn't in itself make it any more pure than other forms of art. A lot of artists go out and create lots of fantastic art with no concept of whether they're going to get any payment for it. A lot of people produce art and know that they'll never get recognition for it, certainly not in their lifetimes, but possibly not ever. But they make it because they want to. And that means that someone scrolling on a toilet wall is no different in why they're creating the art to someone else that's doing another form of art. There's nothing to separate them except the materials, and we don't go into that because that is not going to determine which is the purest form. Otherwise we'd have a massive fight between painters and sculptors, and we're not going to go and do that, are we? So I'm going to argue that just because you don't want financial reward or you don't want critical acclaim, it doesn't make you a more pure artist. Purity in art is very subjective, and perhaps that's an argument for another time. Okay, thank you very much. I hope you've enjoyed this, and if you did, remember to click a like button, share it with your friends so that they can argue whether art is pure or whether graffiti is art, and everything else we've talked about today. And if you have a different view to what I've just put across, then please do leave a message in the comments section below, and we'll talk about it amongst ourselves, and we'll see whether we can come to the conclusion that has evaded artists and art critics for centuries. But anyway, thank you very much for watching. Remember to subscribe for future videos because there will be more in the future. But until next time, I've been Kirk-Robinson, you've been watching The Knob Mouse Show, and I'll see you tomorrow.